Hello, everyone. So good morning, afternoon, and evening. And thank you for joining our intimate conversation on how to maintain a healthy and successful business model during and after the effects of COVID-19 pandemic. This is hosted by the Resolution Innovation Hub in partnership with Social Collider. My name is Carly Gallo. I'm the Assistant Director of Programs at the Resolution Project. And as you can tell, we will be recording this conversation because we will be distributing it to our Resolution community. While our panelists are speaking, please keep yourself on mute and drop any questions that you have into the chat. A little bit about the Resolution Project. So Resolution provides a lifelong holistic fellowship for young entrepreneurs around the world. To date, Resolution supports over 500 fellows in 81 countries who collectively have impacted the lives of 2.9 million people. The support that Resolution provides comes from the form of seed funding, resources, mentorship, and initiatives like the Innovation Hub. A little bit more about the work that we're doing with our hubs. So the hubs were created as a part of an ongoing mission to extend Resolution's network to a global community. The purpose of these hubs is to foster collaboration between fellows, local entrepreneurs through events, partnerships, and opportunities. They provide a space for entrepreneurs to meet, collaborate, and partner with community members to build local innovation ecosystems through events like this one, partnerships, networking, skill building, and more. Currently, our Innovation Hub in Singapore is in partnership with Social Collider, and it is my distinct honor to introduce Russ New. Russ is a venture partner impact at Quest Ventures, a leading venture fund for technology companies that have scalability in large internet communities. The Impact Fund, the first in Asia from a venture capital fund, focuses on the base of pyramid issues in Southeast Asia. Russ is also the founder and CEO of Social Collider, a joint project with JCT and Quest Ventures that is building a collaborative co-working and co-innovation community for impact organizations in Singapore. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Russ to introduce our facilitator and our panelists today.
Thank you. Thanks, Carly. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's panel, and very good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, right, wherever you are. So a quick introduction about Social Collider, where we are an impact aggregator based in Singapore, where we help fellow social entrepreneurs and enterprises to scale up and connect with different resources. So if you are in Singapore or even in the region and you are interested to set up your own social enterprise, give me a ping. We're happy to see how we can support your endeavors. So with that, very quickly, I think today we've got 3 folks. Wow, we've got friends from Venezuela, from Nepal, wow, and Michigan, right, and the States, okay, New York, and of course Singapore, right? And I hope all of us keep safe wherever we are, right? So today I'd like to introduce Haziq, who will be our moderator and facilitator, right? And Haziq has been, sorry, from Suman. Okay, sorry, I need to sidetrack because I see that you are doing your master's at Tsinghua. And just a quick introduction, Eileen and myself. Eileen is a co-founder at Fairmarch. We were from Tsinghua as well, and we did our MBA at Tsinghua as well. And that's our first introduction to, right, to social entrepreneurship. So coming back, right, Haziq is an alum of the Resolution project, and as well as, he has done a lot of impact projects, right, the Project Nomad, and I'll let him share a little bit more about himself shortly. Okay, so Haziq is our moderator and facilitator today, right? With us also is Eileen, who is a co-founder at Fairmarch. And Fairmarch is one of Singapore's leading e-commerce platform for social enterprises, and the impacts that they have done to help the social entrepreneur, right, the fellow social enterprises with products and or services to sell, okay, can't be neglected, right? Okay, again, I'll let Eileen share more later. With us is Victor, who is from Hatch, and Hatch is one of the key again, leading social enterprises in Singapore that help vulnerable youths. And I may have misrepresented that, but I would like to think it's vulnerable youths, right, to help them in terms of training their skills and letting them be employable, right? So again, I'll let Victor share a little bit more about that himself later. Our third speaker is Tuan, and I think he is held up at the moment, so we will skip that for now, right? And I'll hand this back over to Kali, right? Thank you.
Thank you so much for those incredible introductions, Stress. I'm actually going to hand it over to Hazik now. Like I said before, if you have any questions, go ahead and drop those questions into the chat. Fiona will be collecting them for our panelists. But with that, the floor is Hazik's to start this conversation.
Hi, everyone. Hi, fellow entrepreneurs, impact makers. I'm really happy to see everyone here. So together with the Resolution team and Social Collider, the main reason being why we want to have these panels because COVID has been really, really challenging for all of us. You know, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're an NGO, for profit, for impact. So the whole point of this panel is just for us to kind of like understand how our whole experience has allowed us to navigate during this difficult period. So I will begin by just sharing a little bit about myself, and then probably Eileen, Tuan, and Victor can do that as well, right? So I'm actually running a direct-to-consumer brand right now in Kuala Lumpur. Been doing that for 1.5 years, and I also have like a social impact, social entrepreneurship venture based in India and Indonesia. So we work with rural artisans and make sure that they have access to a decent income through fair trade. And we also reinvest that in developmental projects. I also used to be a country manager for one of the impact brands, if you heard of Toms before. Without further ado, I would like to pass on to Eileen to tell us about her amazing work.
Thanks, Hazik. So I'm Eileen, I'm from Singapore, and well, background-wise, I basically have spent time in both the public as well as the private sector, looking at regional growth and strategy. So decided to take a leap about a year ago when I felt like I wanted to do more than just drive a company's bottom line. So here I am running, or rather co-founded Fairmatch and running them with 2 other founders. So basically we are a B2C e-commerce platform looking to support socially driven businesses with a sustainable source of revenue. So that's it from me.
Over to you, Victor.
Thanks, Hazik. Hi guys, this is Victor here. So firstly, I would like to say that it's been a long time since I've been in a room with an international audience. I think especially like since COVID hit, it's been a long time, and it's really exciting to see that there is people here who's coming in their mornings, evenings, and afternoons. So I'm Victor. I founded Hatch. On our end, we are a training and job matching social enterprise, catering to young adults from all walks of life. So this could be people who have very diverse levels of qualifications, very diverse backgrounds, social, emotional. And the goal is to look at emerging sectors in digital and design and to try to help them to tap into these opportunities. So in essence, like in our day-to-day, we run train and place programs trying to match them to jobs. We have one track in user interface, user experience, UI UX design, and another track in digital marketing. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing. And you know, it's really nice to know that Eileen is actually running sort of like a marketplace for e-commerce, and then Victor is actually empowering you know, people from all walks of life, you know, by allowing them to navigate their career through job placement. And I felt that, you know, some way or somewhat COVID has impacted your businesses, right? So I mean, if you don't mind, could you just take us through this journey as to how COVID has actually affected you? Yeah, we would love to know more about that.
Maybe I'll start first, Victor. Anyway, I've unmuted myself, so I should just start. So, okay, so we often get this question about, oh, how has COVID been? Is it a difficult year? And we always respond that as challenging as 2020 was, it wasn't that bad for us. And I like to think that it's because of how our business was designed to be. So we are an online e-commerce marketplace, and at the end of the day, when COVID hit, what we saw was actually a shift towards online shopping. So I know it's prevalent, but I think in Singapore, when you have no choice but to rely on online shopping for every single need, we started to actually see an uptick in terms of interest in shopping on our platform. And the second thing that happened, I felt maybe this is more anecdotal, was the fact that people were actually interested in doing good. So I think when COVID hit, people started thinking about life and what it means. And I felt like there was a lot of interest in just CSR related stuff and trying to do more than just have a job, have a family. I want to have meaning in my life. And as a result of that demand from a very consumer perspective, we too saw increasing interest in the products that we had and the businesses that we were showcasing on our platform. So I think that was one thing that we saw trending, and even from a corporate perspective, what was once perhaps things that they wouldn't consider, because, for example, if a company had maybe a CSR event offline, in COVID times, it just wasn't possible. So then that opened up a avenue of opportunity for us. The second thing, okay, so I talked so much about B2C and consumer-facing sort of opportunities, but the other thing that benefited us as well was the partners that we were bringing on board. So because a lot of offline opportunities were no longer available, as a result, some of the NGOs, the charities who once were relying on these potential platforms for revenue, realized that, hey, I have to pivot my business and I have to go online. And these businesses were small in terms of resources. And so in a way, Fairmatch worked out for them because we were able to say, hey, join us. We would synergize your efforts and give you marketing support. So talked way more than I should, but basically I think that COVID was actually okay for Fairmatch. Over to you, Vic.
Yeah, actually, like I share quite a similar sentiment when I was thinking back about Hatch journey. But to start with, like we did get affected primarily in our operations. So we run train to place programs for very diverse groups. This diverse group. So in very broad strokes, we have open market programs that the typical learner who wants to enter into digital marketing or UI UX design enrolls into. And for those programs, it's not that hard to move online. But we do have this other program, which is very close to our heart, which is basically a customized program for vulnerable youths. In Singapore, like we look at them in terms of kind of three broad categories. The youth don't really fall so nicely into them, but to us, we look at it in terms of like risk factors. So it could be used from dropout backgrounds, at-risk backgrounds, and low-income groups. And usually in these groups, while Hatch comes in to do digital and design training, a lot of effort needs to go into the social emotional training first. And the very kind of like definite thing about social emotional learning is that it can't be translated so easily online. And I think that it was something that we've tried, it really didn't work out very well. And I think that when we were looking at, when you start to dive into like lower income groups, you realize that not every one of them have the same access to facilities, things like laptops and Wi-Fi's. So that was quite difficult. I think we also had to kind of decide internally, like, do we proceed with the classes when things started to get a little bit better? These kind of decisions are those that we have to make. So those are parts where we did get operationally affected. But I think at the same time, what we also saw is that because of the sector that we were in, digital and design, suddenly a lot of companies are looking at these areas. So they started hiring more people. And I think in general, like as a startup, like we are more agile. It is much easier for us to adapt to what the companies need and to increase our intake, etc. Yeah.
Thank you, Victor. I really resonate with what both of you actually mentioned because I run an online business as well. So definitely COVID has impacted me in a positive way. Basically changing habits of an online consumer. And Victor, like you mentioned a really interesting point regarding the challenges that you face, right? I would love for you to explain that a little bit more later on, but we have our third panelist that just joined us, another amazing social entrepreneur. I would like to welcome Tuan. So Tuan, if you could just, spend some time to share with us about the amazing work that you do. Over to you, Tuan.
Hi everyone. Sorry for being late. I was mistaken that it's 8:30, and but instead it's 8. Sorry about that. I run this social enterprise. We develop elder care products, and one of them is this collection of smart walking stick. So basically, it's about this helping the elderly to kind of move out from their to embark into walking instead of staying at home because of the injury. A lot of elderly, they refuse to go out because they feel that they don't want to use the walking stick, and they don't want to be seen as using a walking stick. So what we have done is we put a lot of gadgets, a lot of design improvement to hope to have more conversion rate. So, and coming back to the topic about COVID and how it has affected my business, I would say this time round of COVID, right, is actually worse than last year. Most of my customer are actually retail customer, the real retail where because we have present in most of the hospital and rehab shop, and we also have present in online. But we realized that the sales in the retail shop actually dropped a lot last year, but this year is even worse than last year. So that is what we observe. But this year we are also more fortunate in the sense that we have more reaction time, in the sense that last year when we faced this COVID issue, right, we only have my basic website that's selling my walking stick and some other like Fairmarch and some other smaller website, e-commerce website. But during that time, we actually slowly convert to make our product available in all the major platforms. In Singapore, what is big here is Lazada, Shopee, and Amazon. So we make our product available in those major platforms. That help us a lot more. The other thing that what we have done that kind of improve is that we cut down a lot of rental. So like in the past, we used to have pay some rental on the shelf in the hospital and things like that. So we reduce those rental for the hospital shelving. So that kind of cut down some overhead, I would say. So this we basically do things. We make our present more available on the Bigger Boys marketplace, online marketplace. And the other thing is we cut down our overhead to reduce the overhead that we have to spend on a monthly basis. So these are the two things that we have done more evidently that we try to survive. I wouldn't say thrive. Yeah. So basically,
amazing. Thank you for sharing, Tuan. I think that. Sorry, yeah, go on.
Yeah, basically that's what I did. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So thank you. So I think that was what Victor was mentioning, right? Like being agile, and I felt that you are really agile at what you do. And I just wanted to like ask as well, like because I mean you have majority of your income stream coming from retail stores, right? And then you had to make the switch to online. Hello?
Yes. I lost a bit of the signal just now, but I think what you are saying is before COVID, okay. All along from day one, I do have an online platform from day one, but that is never my source, my actual focus. My focus is really on the hospital and rehab shop, because people who go to those places, they are hot customer, they already have a need. So the question is, do they buy it from you or buy it from some other option? But the buyer are there. I mean, the customer are ready to buy. The question is, do you have the right product for them? So it's easier to do a conversion from the physical store, especially in hospital and rehab shop where they have the needs to buy. So, but online, I need to have a present because it's, in this age, people want to check on your website, and also this website create some form of authority where we have the photograph, the information. When the reseller, the salesman, and promoter on the streets, right, when they want to sell your product, they can always refer back to your website to have more detailed information and to counter check on the pricing and the function. So my website, even though it's an e-commerce website, it actually serves more for the authority purpose than the selling purpose. So that has always been the direction, and it's also intentional to kind of maintain the price. If not, the reseller will start to have a price war if I do not maintain this standard pricing.
Interesting. So I think Tuan is coming from a background where he actually had to kind of like move his resources, right, from focusing on retail, how to be digitally more present online. So I mean, I would like to pass it over to Eileen, because right from day one, you're already a marketplace that is focused on being online, right? And I'm sure that, like you mentioned earlier, COVID has somehow impacted you in a positive way. How have you harnessed that to even grow your business during this period?
That is a great question. So I think when I reflected about what I do differently, so once again, to be honest, it wasn't so much different, but the fact that we sort of took this opportunity to really double down on what we were trying to do. So we just about building our value proposition as an e-commerce expert or trustworthy platform. I think there's a better word for that, in terms of being able to link people or customers who are interested in doing good with businesses representing social causes that resonated with them. So I think that for us was something that we were very mindful about, and we made sure that in terms of even the opportunities that we were pursuing, it just opened up, I think, our minds to what could happen if we sort of built on this. So for example, even initially I mentioned we started as a B2C sort of business, right? So typically your definition of a customer is you and me, consumers. But we realized because of COVID, actually there were a bunch of corporates who were actually looking for ways to still do CSR activities and initiatives, but they were limited by COVID rules or the situation. So, and when I say corporates in terms of opportunities from there, I am referring less to things like, oh, can you buy from us bulk purchases of care packs, for example. We did some of that, but that wasn't the point. We sort of saw that as an opportunity to sort of pivot a little bit or scale that customer definition slightly and say, hey, why don't I go to you and offer to design an impact event that is purely online. So we sort of seeded that idea with the big four meaning like your PwC, KPMG, EY, and Deloitte. And we said, why don't you guys come together, do what you are already doing, but we will help you amplify your impact. So to be honest, this was never something that we planned from the beginning. I mean, we're not that smart. We didn't say like, oh yes, this is our strategy, but it was a result of the opportunities that were happening. And then we said, why don't we just try as a first-time pilot project and see how that goes. And I think that for us was really eye-opening, the fact that there was interest in what we were proposing, and the ability to, what I said, amplify impact. So meaning that every company that spent $1 investing in a typical CSR initiative saw their impact magnified by 3 times, partly because we were a platform with integrated products and different social causes. So, a typical CSR event would be, let us choose maybe, disadvantaged children as a cause, right? And then they would just put, 10,000 in. So I think that was something that we changed as well in terms of what people were expecting. So this for us was actually the biggest lesson learned. It's about being able to potentially think out of the box and do not let definitions define you. So if you ask me, I still have a B2C strategy because technically the corporate employees were customers, but it's about how then you build on that concept.
Right. I think generally, like for someone that runs a business, right? Like, I mean, if you're new to business, you don't really have much experience. once you kind of like find your ground, you get really comfortable in that, right? And I guess my question is that how do you kind of like challenge yourself to kind of like make that leap, right? I mean, psychologically, emotionally, sometimes you get too attached over the fact that, you know, will this work, will this not work? But my previous idea is already working. How do you kind of like jump through that?
So to be honest, there isn't really a playbook per se. And actually this applies to all beyond social enterprises startups. It's a lot of times, you know, it's about going by the limited information that you have, the gut feel, for lack of a better word, about what might work and what doesn't work, and based on feedback that you get. But I would say that whatever decision you're making, if it's different from your original starting point or strategy, take the time to then revisit your original mission and value proposition. So we always had that vision to enable a world where every dollar spent contributes to a better future. So we knew that whatever activities we did, whatever ways we sort of repackage things, it should be in line with that vision. And our value proposition fundamentally was being able to be a trustworthy platform in curating the social businesses or the businesses with the relevant products, with the relevant causes, and share that with people who are interested, right? And people is debatable. People could be customers like you and me, or they could be corporates. So in a way, I didn't think that we were actually journeying too far from that original premise. And that was why it was almost a no-brainer. In fact, the only concern, if anything, was manpower and resources. Because obviously corporates have a higher expectation than a customer like you and me. and it requires, like, you know, a couple of months engagement. So I think that was the only thing that we spent a lot more time thinking through to make sure that we could deliver and deliver well, because it was a pilot project. Maybe just to add on a bit, so what Tuan shared about having to move online, right, as part of his pivoting. So I was just reflecting upon that, and I realized that actually for us, we actually reached a point where we had to make a decision as well about whether or not we should set up an offline store. So interestingly, what happened during COVID situation was that a couple of retail shopping malls started to have available space, and they all wanted to do some form of CSR initiatives. So they were saying, oh, why don't we invite a player like Fairmatch to then do that? And we remember when we first received that invitation, we were really excited. We're like, oh my gosh, you know, an online to offline concept, something that we dreamed about, but maybe, you know, 5 years later. But ultimately, we didn't do that because it went back to resources and whether or not it was in line with our original strategy, right? And we realized that fundamentally, we were set up to be an online business, and going offline is not going to help us if our team manpower size isn't going to change, and we were not ready for that. So I mean, never say never, but I think this is just an example of how then do you need to stay true to your mission, your vision, and your strategies.
Thank you, Lynn. I think that's a really, really great advice, right? You got to keep focused to what you're able to at the moment, spread yourself too thin, and then you have nothing left to grow. So next one is that I want to give Victor some chance as well, right? I just want to touch back the topic that you mentioned earlier about social and emotional learning, how it's kind of like really difficult to get that done, especially for, like, you know, some of your beneficiaries through an online portal, right? So how did you manage to kind of like transition your business towards overcoming that challenge itself?
Right. I mean, truthfully, like, we basically decided not to run that course if we're not able to do it physically. Basically, we've thought of different approaches. We've thought of having online curriculums. We've even explored like one-to-one mentoring and coaching sessions. But after having tried it out, we thought, okay, like, you know, it's clear to us it does not work. We need to acknowledge that it does not work. So basically what we did was we postponed the program until it could take place physically. I think one of the things that we learned through this period is the importance of a strong ecosystem. What I think made a big difference in terms of like the community was that in this point of time when a lot of partners could not do that social emotional learning, there were social service agencies in Singapore who kind of stepped up and actually took extra effort to look at the social emotional well-being of youths. And for these agencies, like this these are professionals who does this work, and they do have like permission from the government to carry out this work, even during the COVID times.
Thanks, Victor. So right now, for your business, like does the entire business take a pause for the time being? Are there plans to unroll something, or let's say if COVID will be around to stay for like the next 2 years?
Yep.
What's your strategy to kind of like roll out?
Yeah. So I think to start with, there are two main groups that we work with. There is the more vulnerable group that we've realized that social emotional, it's not good to have, it's a must-have, right? And then there is the open market group. For the open market, it's actually not that much challenging. Like people don't like online learning. None of us really like trying to figure out what digital marketing is online. But for most of them, they understand the constraints, they work around it, it's fine. For the vulnerable group, we must find a way to be able to deliver it if COVID is here to stay. I think what the things that we are exploring is through partnerships with the social service agencies. So I might not be able to go down to the homes of these youths, but there are social workers who can. And for these social workers, what they can do is to make sure that the youth is provided with the right equipment, provided with the right set of environment. Oftentimes, these are not very easy tasks because it involves, like talking to the parents and say that, okay, you need to give your son or daughter this time in this space. And at the same time, like there can be like 5 to 6 other children that's running around. So these are the conversations that we need our partners to do. And basically for us to continue to deliver what we are out to deliver through the COVID times, the partners are also must have. And we take a lot of, we take that very, very seriously. So even when like right now, like there's the vaccine rollout is going quite well. It's still a conversation that we have with partners.
Right. Thank you, Victor. I think it's really nice when you mentioned about how when there are certain constraints that there are partnerships formed in order to help you solve those problems. Right. At the end of the day, everyone is working together to create the impact that you wanted to deliver. Yeah, that's really beautiful. Tuan, I would like to actually ask, similar to what I asked Victor, right? I mean, with regards to strategy, perhaps you could share a little bit more detail as to when you transition from, being heavy in retail to online. You did mention about joining a few marketplaces. And I think simply just joining a few marketplaces, it's the foundation of starting your journey of having omnipresence online. What are the strategies that you have lined up for yourself, right, in order to make sure that you're digitally active during this period?
Okay, I can share one thing is that interestingly, when I started this product, right, one of the main thing that is behind my back is I've always been focusing on the positioning of the product. How much is my customer willing to pay for that collection in terms of the value proposition? So that has always been at the back of my head. And before COVID, there's already established a certain price range, and we can feel that they are willing to pay a bit more if you give them more value in the product range. And that's why we built up to make the carbon fiber collection available. And when COVID hit, right, we realized that people are not so willing to pay at a higher range of a product range. So what we have done is instead of pushing out the next collection of carbon fiber chair, we have come out with a collection of aluminum alloy, but wrapped with carbon fiber looks. So it's a bit like copying my own carbon fiber collection, and we managed to achieve a much lower price range to suit the other segment of the market. So for people who are willing to pay more, they can experience the full product range, which is lighter and stronger. But for people who want to have the look and have the gadget, they can actually enter the market, enter my product range at a much lower price point. And without much perks of it. The perks comes when if they buy a normal walking stick, and then if they say about 1 year later, they need more support, they can actually buy the accessory to add on. So they don't have to buy everything from the start. That kind of reduce the, it's like a reduced version of my collection, and yet they don't have to pay the full price. So we push out this collection recently, so that we think that maybe the pocket is shrinking, so we need to reduce the price range collection as well. So this is one of the strategy that I have tweaked over the past, past 1 year. But because it's a collection, it's a walking stick, it's a product, we can't just say, push out a program just overnight. We have to look into a lot of the supply chain problem. Do we have the support from different, we call different supplier that can help us in different area? Then, and after we achieve that, can we still maintain the consistency in the product range? So there's a lot of things that we need to look into when we build a collection. So yeah, so basically, in short, basically we copy ourselves at a lower price point.
Wow, that's really, really cool. I mean, you diversifying in order to cater to like a certain segment of the market, right? You did mention about supply chain though, and I'm just wondering that you're doing your R&D, and then you have inventories that you're on hold, and you need to plug in new inventories. How difficult was it for you to manage that supply chain component? Like, was it difficult for you to bring in materials into Singapore during that early period when we had COVID? If you do, how did you manage to navigate past that?
It's difficult because we don't know. Is the problem didn't come to you like, this is A, B, C, D, then you kind of hope you can solve the problem. It come in random, it come in the least expected time. So you just have to take one thing at a time because you don't know what problem will come about, and when it come, then you kind of work around it. Sometimes ideally you want to have a few A, B, C, but realistically, when you roll out the project, right, you didn't get A, B, and C, you get A, B, and D. So we just have to work around things as the supplier doesn't support you, or the timing is not right. And of course, along the way, I do make mistakes as well. So we don't get an A, B, C, we get an A, B, D instead. So yeah, so that's I wouldn't say it's overcome, but I would just say we just have to be resilient to work around things.
Important word is resilience. Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing, Tuan. What about yourself, Eileen? What are some of the strategies that you employed? I know that you did mention that there is a shift towards catering for corporate, creating impact for them online. Could you perhaps share more, even for your direct to consumer space? Were there any significant strategies that's being rolled out?
So well, this is actually like a smaller, I would say, tweak that we did. So it goes back to actually product offering. So what we realized when we started the e-commerce platform, we were not that discerning in terms of onboarding partners, meaning that not that they were not good, just to clarify, they were all perfectly valid businesses, but it was the types of products that we're bringing in. So we realized over time, we had a lot of similar looking stuffed toys, accessories, earrings, which are great, but people don't buy that every day. So we realized then potentially we're putting ourselves in a sort of seasonal cycle where people will buy only for Mother's Day, Christmas, and after that, nothing. So over the last year, we spent a lot more time trying to think about, okay, what keeps people coming back? And that is perishable goods. So we actually started building the F&B sort of offerings, so cookies and cakes, because we know that you can order that every week and you will not be tired of that, of eating that. Or there'll always be people to buy for, especially in Singapore. There's been this pattern during COVID of people buying each other meals all the time, or gifts. and then it creates a cycle of just popcorn sharing of food. So I think that's something that I felt was a very deliberate consideration, even in terms of when we did vendor onboarding and all that. How do you change that perspective slightly? The second thing that we did, maybe less intentionally, was to recognize that we were too fixated on building ourselves as a platform, meaning that we're just thinking about, okay, what are the things we can do to drive business revenue, right? Immediate tangible returns. But over the last year, we realized too that, hey, actually there are intangible returns that you can get by positioning yourself as a maven or a knowledge holder in terms of being able to tell the stories of the companies on our platform, being able to talk about the impact that people would get if they support us on the platform. So the stories behind companies like Tuan. So Tuan's on Fairmatch as well. And we wanted to tell his story of how he started, what he seeks to do. So I would call it more a branding approach where you are writing stories, you're doing content creation to share that with your community. But if you ask me, do we see immediate tangible returns? Do people buy a teddy bear because they read our story? Or do they buy a walking stick from Tuan because they read about it? You might not see that direct correlation, right? But it is something that you need to invest time and effort in to just tell people who you stand for. And this would then create buy-in and even a recognition of, oh, okay, now that I believe in who you stand for as a company, I would like to support the different causes that you're sharing with me, or this is relevant to me, and I really need a Christmas present now, so I should buy it from you. So I think that's something that we're investing in. I would say it's brand capital, and we hope to see a payoff in the longer run.
Wonderful. So when you talk about investing in your brand capital, right? Does that involve both paid media campaigns or only organically?
So because we are a very limited resource company, so a lot of it actually it's personal resources. So we do have a community of volunteers who write stories for us. So and amazingly, because they believe in what we stand for, they have been really supportive in giving us a free time or contribution. That's one. And then I think what happened over time was that we were building our social media channels base. So Fairmatch owned Instagram, Facebook accounts, LinkedIn. So we use that as a channel as well to sort of share our stories. Something that we are thinking about. So to your point, I think less paid spend. We do some of it at a campaign level, depending on whether or not it's Father's Day or Christmas, for example. We invest some of that. But generally, it's free resources, relying on goodwill, volunteers, and something that we're actively thinking about is finding suitable partners to do the things that we believe in. So I talked a bit about content creation. So obviously, when we first started doing it, it was really me learning how to do home videos. Like I really had to go to Google and learn how do you make your own videos, and sort of tell that story better, right? But I think now we're evolving to a point where we're like, hey, why don't we find partners that maybe share the same views as us? So a video production company that might consider working with us to do a couple of short stories about CSR, about social impact, and do that potentially pro bono because they believe in what we do, right? So it's tapping on CSR goodwill, but in a different way. So I think that's something that I would highly encourage everyone to do. When you have limited resources, you need to think out of the box. And I think like Tuan mentioned, Victor mentioned, finding like-minded people to partner and drive your bigger goal.
Very valuable insight. I feel like the takeaway that I get from all of our panelists today is that partnership is very, very important, right? So we started the panel discussion by talking specific about COVID, right? So I kind of want to just now that we're halfway in, I want us to take a step back. And my question to you is generally as an entrepreneur in this phase, at this current stage of your business, what are the current challenges that you're facing, right? Because I mean, most of you here, you're no longer in the stage where you're testing your MVP. You've been around for quite some time. So it'll be great to know that the challenges that you're facing at this stage. Probably we can give Eileen a break first. Must be really tiring to talk. So probably Tuan or Victor, you might want to start first.
Sure. Sorry, can you repeat the question again? Sorry about that.
No worries. So my question is that I just wanted us to take a step back, right? And the question is that what is the current challenges that you face? Because every one of us is at different stage in growing our business. So for like yourself, one, like you already had your product in the retail line, you're at the phase where you're trying to grow your business even further. So what is the current set of challenges that you face now as compared to when you first started?
Oh, okay. So there's a few problems. One of the recent problem that arise is the cost of the raw material and the freight forwarding costs have shoot up over the months to be quite a lot. And so as a result, I have to raise my price. If not, it doesn't work. And so the adjustment of the price is one of the big challenge, because I have not really tried that. So I'm trying to learn how to do that in a skillful way. So the other thing is that I also realized that because it's not that I just own the online business and I can just list a price and that will be it, because I have to work with many reseller, and they must agree with it, and they must be they must work with you to establish that. And you must also exercise a lot of flexibility. For example, in order to help the lower income elderly folks, we work very hard to push our product range to make it recognized by the AIC SMF Fund. Is agency of mobility fund. Is a senior mobility fund. Basically, it's for people who are not working, elderly who stay alone in the house and there's no income. So the government actually paid like 90% of the product. So if a walking stick, say, costs $80, they just have to pay about $8. So that is a big reduction. So we work very hard to achieve that. But the problem is that each contract, when you tender, right, it's a time frame. So if you negotiate a certain price that you lock in, you couldn't tell the government that, hey, I need to increase price. They wouldn't care. So so we have to work around that. Okay, for those that is affected, how do we work around things? So there's a lot of small issue that we have to work around, both from the supplier side as well as the reseller side, that they must help you to achieve a common goal. If not, they would say, never mind, you do your own things, I do my own. Then it's very tough to just to restart the whole journey. So that's one of the main challenges as of now for me.
Maybe I'll go next. So Haziq, when you were talking about challenges, there were two main challenges that came to mind. The first is a very boring answer, but I think it is really at the top of my mind, and I think it's very important that I put it out there, which is that growth is very expensive. So usually, like so for Hatch, like at our stage now, you have quite a clear idea of what you're doing. You know that there is some validation here and there. You know that if you run something, there is customers because you have know how to run it and you have a name for it, right? But even then, like any investments in growth to do more business, to do better in the future, is intrinsically expensive. That's just the definition of like capital, right? So that there is a meme that's been going around for a while that, a lot of times when we talk about people who have succeeded, oftentimes like the part that they don't share is how much capital that they have to start with. I do think that there are very, very inspiring entrepreneurs out there who have done it completely bootstrapped. But I think it's important for all of us to recognize, especially like if you're going to do it on your own, right, you need to face the reality that growth is expensive and you need to have a plan about it. So in Hatch N, there is usually like some form of like excess cash that you get from the profits, right? It's almost impossible to know how to prioritize. Everything is important. I think that when you're running a social enterprise, you always have that bit about do you bring it back into business so that you have more cash in the future to do impact, or do you do it now? And what does each of the decisions mean about you? So that's the first challenge. It's quite boring, but I think it's the most important. The second, it's very specific to for Hatch, because we are in this impact space. So I think that for us, we are a social enterprise because we think that there exists models out there which have both good impact and good business. We have seen it happen. We have some projects like that, but they are very few and also very difficult to build towards. So maybe like when Hatch, we work on 5 projects. You can start out all of the 5 thinking that this will be one of those with good impact and good business. Eventually, you have one that is super amazing that you're going to keep doing, but there's going to be 4 that fails, and all the time will still have to be invested for you to figure out which ones of these are which. But I do think that it is something that it's very, very beautiful that we will still try to move towards, but it is difficult. Yeah.
So I think for me, the first challenge would still go back to what I've sort of alluded to a couple of times, which is the resource crunch. So the idea of needing to be ruthlessly prioritizing and always prioritizing, because every week there'll be new opportunities that appear, right? And you're like, oh, I want to do this, that, oh, everything looks good, how? And I think something that our team has learned, so the 3 of us honestly are really limited in capacity, is if you wanted to do something well, you should try to streamline what you're doing because otherwise you're not going to get very far. And we have come to realize that there are normally 3 questions we ask ourselves before deciding about whether to do something. So I think 1, whatever we're trying to do, is it going to help the people, the businesses that we want to impact? So core brand value proposition, what exactly are we trying to achieve? The second thing we do ask ourselves is this scalable, what you're doing? Or is it going to be a one-off, really small thing that you do because you feel like, oh, let me support this company, but it's not going to go anywhere. So I think sometimes you feel bad, but then you have to walk away because it doesn't help you. And the third thing we ask ourselves is, does it lead us closer to our longer term vision and strategy? So I think these 3 questions have always helped us in taking a step back to say, hey, what are we doing for time and our resources? And how then do we optimize what we have? The second challenge, I would say, it goes back to, it might sound ironic, but at the end of the day, you have to play the long game. So some opportunities take a while to see fruition. It might take months. So for example, our corporate projects, some of it takes like 4 to 6 months to see something, right? And obviously you don't get paid before that. So it's constant pitching. But you have to sort of manage that and go inside like, okay, I want to grow this business with quick wins. So what are some things that you need to do immediately? Because as Tuan said, right, the keyword is survival. And you need to get enough in to survive the next month. And sometimes we're talking about weeks, right? It's like, oh, where are we going with this? So I think that is always the constant tension we face. What are we doing today to bring in the quick wins? And yet we need to set aside enough time to build that long game and get the bigger deals in, right? And it goes back to resource, actually. So I think that for me are the 2 main challenges.
Thank you. Yeah, I really like how everyone is being super duper real about it. Resource definitely does matter, right? Just one quick one before we wrap up this portion. When we talk about resource, there's 2 parts to resource, right? Number 1 is that how do we generate revenue so that there's cash flow for us to keep moving forward. Number 2, there's always the option of diluting yourself, raising more funds. At what stage would you decide to jump on either one of the bandwagon? That means from just bootstrapping or bring in more cash to, you know what, let's inject some capital into it. Let's raise some funds. Maybe I could, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
I start from me, is it? You want to hear from me, or is it someone else?
Tuan, you can go first.
Oh, okay. So I find that I think most people would agree money is very, very, very important in every stage, and with more resource, you can definitely do more, no doubt about it. But you can't focus on the so-called investor kind of thing, because you can't control, and so you just have to do what is core in your business, at the same time see if there's opportunity that come by, but you shouldn't really focus on those rich old men. You can't do that. You just have to focus on your core, and at least that's what I do, because actually interestingly, before COVID, every 2 months I have someone calling me, that they are interested in my business. But the problem with me is that I don't know how to validate my business. So I don't know how to put a dollar, to what is my company worth. So a lot of the time opportunity just go by, So but I look at it that way. You just work on your product, and but of course I do have a benchmark. I hope to achieve, for me, I hope to achieve all my collection to have a more consistent. I'm working towards this my collection to be more unified, because but now they are not. So and I need a minimum volume to make the business, I would say, more sustainable. Right now, there's a lot of things to work on still. So I felt that I have not reached a sweet spot where I need to do that next stage where you get this some other player in too, because when you have other player in, they have other thinking, and it may dilute your core in what you will try to achieve, because it's still we are still not there yet. So I find that it's not the right time as of now. That's for me.
Yeah, Haziq, I was gonna say that you follow up with our real responses with an even more real question. So I think that one of the things that I think about on this question, right, is that what is the end game that Hatch is playing, that Hatch wants to play? So I mean, a lot of people talk about this, right? Like, are you looking for like an exit? Are you going to stay as a small medium enterprise forever? Are you going to look to be an MNC or IPO? And I genuinely think that the best option is the one that is most aligned with your values, like you as like the founder. There's different shareholders of the company. I can speak for Hatch case, like on our end, we want to be that trusted academy for the everyday folk. So regardless of who you are, if you want to pick up digital and design skills, you know that on Hatch end, we are trusted, approachable people that can help to make these opportunities available for everyone. So by nature of that, like, we're not looking to like sell off to some other corporate at some stage, right? We're looking at a long-term growth, and with that, you kind of it gets quite it's not that hard to limit down your number of options available, and then from there to try to figure out that, okay, if that is the end goal, what are the strategies that lead you to that stage? I think one of the things that I realize is that if we look at the media now, a lot of like if you see media articles, it's because like startups raise funding, right? But what we don't realize, and if you work with business owners, it's very, very real. It's that oftentimes the most comfortable, the most happy people are those small, medium business owners. Once you figure out like that right kind of like recipe, you got the model right. I think the most amazing thing is if you're also doing something that you fundamentally love to do, and then that I think is success for them. So yeah, I think that this is step probably the most important consideration when thinking about this question.
So I totally agree with Tuan and Victor. I think there's no right answer for this actually. And it's something that I don't even think we at Fairmark have been able to fully answer. And there are days when we're like, yes, let's get funding in. And there are days like, no, we don't want funding. And it oscillates from there. So I think, okay, so going back to why we sort of constantly have this debate, the challenge here is we have reached a point where we're not sure we want to give up autonomy in terms of how we want to run the company, grow the business, and doing what we believe in based on passion and a vision, right? And as we had a couple of discussions with potential investors, we realized too that the conversation always goes back to profit and profitability. How do you get there? And while this is an important lens, so I should encourage everyone who is doing a startup, you should always have that at the back of your minds. You need that. The question is, when do you start making that the top priority, right? I think that's always the challenge. So I think for us, we decided that, okay, I think right now, let us focus on growing the business the way we want it to be. And maybe we definitely are open to investors, but it is about finding the right fit. It's about making sure the investor believes in what we stand for, and profit cannot be the only reason why we are partnering them. Okay, so I think that for us is our bottom line, and I think in view that we are still able to press on and plow in some revenue to sustain ourselves, we have decided to go for this for now and get ourselves to a more stable state before we revisit this whole discussion again. And I must say that I think, as you guys would know, as you start to set up your own companies and do pitches, right? Investor pitching takes up a lot of time, a lot, to the point that sometimes you don't even have time to do your business, like to run your business, because you're constantly pitching. So I think just to bear in mind that there's always a trade-off. And the question is, what do you want to do now and what do you prioritize? Yeah.
Definitely. I think that's all really, really great answers. I mean, I really enjoyed listening to your thought process with regards to that. Just one last question before we take questions from all the attendees today, right? What's the one advice that you would give to an entrepreneur in order to run a healthy and a successful business in this time?
I can go first.
Sure, Tuan, thanks.
I would like to think that maybe you can internalize if you have you know, religion, you can pray about it. You should always be internalized to know, you know, what if money is not an issue, right? What is the thing you want to do to impact the community you want to impact? I think that is key, because resource is never enough. I mean, if even you have a lot of money, you will have a bigger project, and so it will not be enough. But the thing is, if you know precisely which are the area you want to impact, right, you can take small steps if you have very limited resource. And if you have more resource, you can obviously do more, gather more resource to you know, spin the project, do it faster. But you know, in whether you work for others or you start your own business, there's always up and down. There's always a nice time that you feel, hey, you see, I did a good job, you know, you kind of think that you made the right choice. But there's always a lot of time where you feel, why am I doing this? It's like, it's going nowhere, you know. And at that point of time, that, you know, if you work for others, you can perhaps yes, curse your boss. but when you're doing it on your own, right, then there's no answer and there's no one to curse but yourself. So at the challenging time, you can always go back to the why you want to do this, and that why will be able to, you know, be the safety net for you to fall into, that, you know, this is the reason. And do you want to continue? And if the reason is good enough, then you would, ride through the wave. So I find that the key thing is that before you even start, you have to think about if money is not a concern, what do you really want to impact? Thank you.
So I think I'm quite a mathy person. So I like to think of things in terms of numbers. I think one of the things that when I reflect upon the journey is that as entrepreneurs, we need to think about the concept of compounding. So, compounding is basically like, if you have a certain principle and then there is interest and then there is interest on interest. So if you earn like 5% every year, in 10 years time, you don't get 50%, you get a lot more than that because of compounding. And I think that businesses run in the same way. So when I look back at the past 3 years of Hatch, at almost every point in time, things felt like pretty bad. Like honestly, man, like it's like, there are like 10 things that could have been better. And then you usually don't remember the good things as much as you remember the bad ones. When a client picks up the project, like, oh, okay. And then when somebody drops you and you're like, oh shit, that's like the worst thing that can happen in this week. But it's only when you look back that you realize that sometimes the fact that you're hustling for the past months and years, even going through that stage of like not being super good, not being super bad, that's really where most of the impact is. And that's because of compounding, right? It's like, when you have a staff of 5, when you like do something well, this is the effect. But when you have a staff of 10, that's like a lot more effect. Yeah, so I think that's something that I do think that the human mind is not designed to really grasp that concept of compounding internally. But I think it's important that once we recognize this, to really keep that as the consideration of what the big picture looks like.
So I really like the math analogy, Victor. I feel like potentially there's something that even our team needs to actively reflect upon more. So I think just to build on that too, so while we want to be very mindful about the repercussions that happen as well, right? Because of one decision you make, or where does that lead you to? I would also, I guess my advice to everyone as a startup is that you need to be comfortable existing in a gray area. There will never be, in school, there's always like the perfect business plan. You spend like 200 hours building it, and okay, this is what I'm going to get. You should do that. I should encourage everyone to do that. But when you start the business, right, there will always be situations or unexpected developments and decisions you need to make where people are not going to wait 200 hours later for your decision. You need to decide now. And I think that is when you need to be able to just, based on your broad objective, your long-term vision, your basic criteria about about our decision-making factors that will get you to the answer, and just go with that limited information to move the next step forward. Because the reality of it is something else is going to happen that would change everything and upend the whole situation again, right? So don't fret too much about, I don't know everything, I need to analyze this carefully. It's a balance. I think it's a balance to do that. And if you do make a mistake, don't fret over it. Life sucks sometimes, right? And more importantly, it's about learning from these mistakes and making sure you don't repeat that again. And I can guarantee you that no one leads a perfect life. There will never be a perfect life. So I think when you sort of take a step back and take that into perspective, and you say, hey, wait a minute, this decision that seems so big right now might not be a big thing, 1 month later, 2 months later. So just move forward. But going back to, I think, what Victor and Tuan have shared a bit about, is about that bigger vision, that passion that you have, right? What exactly is driving you to do what you do every single day? And even as you build your business ideas, it is important to really believe in what you want to do. I think profitability is great, and always have that at the back of your mind, but that cannot be the main reason why you're doing it. It has to be underpinned by passion, because there'll be moments where things suck, and you ask yourself, why did I give up a stable job to do this? Then my parents would tell me, I told you so, but it's okay because you have passion. That's the only thing keeping you going. So I think just to bear that in mind, and that would really help. Yep, at least for me. Over to you, Haziq.
wise words, especially about the parents. I really like that one. Yeah, thank you so much for all the takeaways that you give all of us today. And I think that I've talked a lot. I've asked you guys too many questions. So I really wanted to just open it up for the attendees to kind of like shoot any questions that you have. Just type it down in the chat or feel free to just unmute yourself. All right. Okay, we have one question from Muhammad Nazmi. And the question is that at which point do you say, let's give up the business? I think that's a very, very real question, right? So I actually read a study, a paper, and this research paper, basically I think it's a sociological paper. It says that entrepreneurs have to be delusional. To a certain extent, what that paper actually meant was that you have to be delusional in a way because normal people, when they see like a barrier or a roadblock, right, they view it as literally a roadblock. This is dead end. But sometimes for us, we just keep saying that, you know what, there's just an obstacle, we could go past it. And then a bigger obstacle can be like, oh, there's just another obstacle, we can go past it, right? So sometimes people might think that we are crazy. So I guess that's where Nazmi is coming from, right? When is the point that you say, you know what, this is it, it's time to kind of like close shop and start afresh? What are your thoughts on that?
Maybe I can.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Maybe I can share a bit here. Is that I look at it like I mentioned just now. What is the key goal that you want to do? Like for me, my calling is to help the elderly. So, but it's as I reflect upon what can I do to be more effective, is to develop product because of my engineering and design background. So I embark into this journey. But that doesn't mean I should only help elderly in this manner. If my walking stick have some major problem that cause me to stop that particular business model, I look at it as a battle. You lose a battle, you lose a hill, but you don't lose the war. You can continue to help elderly in other ways, like perhaps you look into other projects. And the fact that you are already in the industry, you should be able to find out, hey, there's actually 10 other ways to meet your objective, to help the elderly. So that is my take, is to, each time when things happen, is a loss of a battle, but not a war. So I look at it that way. And yeah, I just hope that I don't lose the war too soon.
I think this is a tough question because we haven't reached that point yet. But I was trying to sort of internalize that, and if anything, I will go back to whether or not I have tried everything that I would like to do to make the business work. So, at the back of your mind, you have this like 3 or 5 things that you want to do to sort of see change in your business or growth. So if I've tried everything and I really don't see things working out, and maybe then it's just not the time, maybe it's time to then walk away. And I personally feel it's harder to walk away because many times you have so much attached to it, there's passion underpinning it. And I think like Tuan said, right, you can translate your passion in other ways. It doesn't all need to be in one business. So I'm sorry, no real answer here, but I would think that is more of a reflection of that max cap, for lack of a better word, the maximum a bit willingness to sort of say, okay, I've tried what I could, and then let's step back.
So I've never given up on the business before, so do take what I say with a pinch of salt, right? But one of the things that I feel is that the business always feels like a baby, but the business is not your baby. You don't have that duty and responsibility as you would to your own baby. I actually think that like the point where you give up the business is when you truly don't want to do it anymore. If there's other founders, you can have that that conversation. And if nobody wants to do it, then that, I think that there is the point. Like, you got to be very honest with yourself. Yeah.
Thank you, Victor. And I think sometimes there's also consideration when the business is not doing too well, you're supposed to downsize. But I mean, I personally actually faced that before. But instead of straightly jumping to the idea of let's give up the business, we actually end up pivoting. So the business leaves through other means thereafter, right? Okay, we have another question from Michelle, right? Her question is, could you each talk a bit more about how you strategically and proactively build your ecosystem, especially while there's so much happening virtually right now?
Maybe I can start off, since I was talking a bit about ecosystem just now. So I think that there is the ecosystem you have, and then there is the ecosystem that you exist in. I'll start with the ecosystem that you have, which is your network of partners, clients, even your vendors. I think that in this case, it's really like trying to find that common ground. Sometimes you have to be very intentional. And whatever like stakeholder that you bring in, you really need to spend the effort to, in a way, like maintain that relationship with them and to keep each other updated about the loop. That's for the ecosystem that you have. I realized you asked one part about, when so much is virtual, it is a bit harder to build it over virtual settings, but I think it's still possible. And then I think there is the bit about the ecosystem that you exist in. So like in our case, we exist in parts of our work exist in this like social sector ecosystem. One of the things that I found very, very helpful is to work with ecosystem builders. So Hatch is not an ecosystem builder. We're one of the people inside of this ecosystem. But you need to kind of, and oftentimes like you look at ecosystem builders and you're like, oh, they got so much resources, why aren't they giving it to me? But you kind of need to see the other end of that table, right? To see what are the things that they're considering. Sometimes they're looking at moving the ecosystem forward in a certain direction. Usually in the macro sense, like they usually get the direction right. So it's about how you can position yourself such that you are somebody who can help them to achieve that direction. Yeah.
So definitely, okay, I was going to say, I was reflecting upon this, and I was going to say, I don't think we did it that strategically, but definitely proactively. So I think in building the ecosystem, many times it requires a lot of networks tapping on other networks. So to be honest, a lot of times like, oh no, who do you know? I need to get someone in the bank, or I want to talk to somebody in this company that I think would be interested in what we have. And then you sort of find ways to sort of build that bridge. And I think to also be mindful that the building of the ecosystem always takes time. So a lot of these conversations don't happen in the first meeting, and which is why I said it's a lot more proactiveness on our part. So strategic meaning we shortlist a group of a list of people or partners of companies based on what we can read on the website to say, okay, I think they're a good fit for us. But ultimately, it goes back down to how proactive you are in following up, almost to the point of being slightly persistent. Not shameless, I would like to think, but just always being in your face. And I think that's always the tension, because how much is too much when you start irritating the other person, right? But the key here is to constantly feed information to the person to keep the conversation going. So I think that's something for us. So I think a lot of times my previous co-founder experienced this the most. He said 1 year ago we were engaging the Big Four, the accounting firms. Nobody seemed interested then, right? But times change. And who knew 1 year later, they say, okay, fine, let's do this. So I think a lot of it was because he continually built that bridge and made sure that he maintained a warm contact or relationship, and he fed information to them. So it goes back to a bit about how you build brand capital, right? When you position yourself as someone that is, for example, you're the social impact expert, or for Hatch, they are seen as a specialist in enabling an inclusive working culture. So then automatically people would come to you, and you, in a way, you start to define the ecosystem. So I think that's something that I think we should start to build towards in the longer term.
Yeah, hi. Maybe I can share a bit about I think it's about I look at it as about collaboration. It's about how you make yourself useful for others. So sometimes you know that there are different people with different business with different objective, and so how can you help them? So by helping them, you're actually helping yourself. So where can you find the sweet spot that you can collaborate with them? So I think finding the sweet spot that you can contribute to help them, I think that is very key in making yourself useful to be part of the ecosystem.
Thank you, Tuan. We can only take one last question, so I'm going to take the question from Joy. So Joy is thinking of starting an online business, and she's asking for advice. Is there any precaution to take, any do's and don'ts? Maybe we can have the e-commerce specialist.
I hesitate to say do's and don'ts because sometimes it's about the mistakes that get you to the success. But I think if I had to reflect upon how we started, maybe more ado is to always start small. So I think don't try to do everything that you want to do in the first month or the first year. So build a roadmap. Definitely dream big, but don't expect yourself to do everything immediately, because sometimes you sort of need to test certain things that you want to do. Is there traction? I think Victor talked a bit about how even Tuan, how they had to change their business product offerings, tweak things, stop things for a while to see what works and what doesn't. So I think that's what I would say. Continue to experiment, do things, test it in a smaller scale before you scale this up.
Thanks, Eileen. So I think Eileen answered well. Victor or Tuan, do you have anything you want to add on? Because I would like to take just one more question.
Maybe I add a bit on to the previous question. I think because the question is so short, right? I don't know the context, but I find that there is a big problem here is that the big boys are really too big. The Amazon and Shopee, Lazada, they are just simply huge. They are like IKEA of the furniture. And for any business that you want to go online, you are fighting with the big boys. So that is something that you have to seriously take into consideration. How do you build in the value system that the big boys cannot achieve? For example, the big boys are going for a certain class of customer, and they are very good at that particular class. It's like you go to Carrefour or you go to NTUC to buy things. So these big boys are very good at this range. So if you are not, you have to avoid these big boys. If you are going to focus on this, you may have to go below it or above it. That they're not very competitive at. Then you work your niche on it, because they are really too big, and when they give discount, there's no way you can make money. So I think that is something that you may want to explore, because I don't really know what you are doing, so I can't really give a precise suggestion.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay, then Victor, I have one last question for you. If you could wrap up the Q&A session, right? So we have a question from Gordon. When companies stray from the founder's value, but then when you stray from the founder's value and you kind of like see growth and improvement, where do you navigate from there? Like, how do you navigate as a founder when you're, I think that's a pretty interesting question.
Yeah, I think this is really, really interesting, Gordon. So I think that one thing to think about is that, if there is growth and improvement is always measured against something, right? And the question is like, what is this growth and improvement, and how does it relate to the values? I do think that I can see this generally plays out when perhaps the values can be very product centric. That means actually the founders just wanted an amazing product, and then they see growth and improvement, like financially, they maybe realize that, oh, you might want to design products that break down so that your users buy from you again. Or maybe the founder's values could be very impact centric, and then you realize that actually it's much easier to just earn money than to do good work. I do think that it boils back to the personal decision. So, like if there is one founder, and then the founder has to ask himself or herself, right? Like, what is it that you want? And I think it's okay to change your values. It's okay to want to fulfill your values in other ways. But you got to be very, very honest with yourself. I think if there is multiple founders, and then you can always have that conversation to say that, okay, maybe like I shouldn't be in this enterprise anymore. Maybe like somebody else can take over. I do think that the key word here is kind of like being very, very honest, because ultimately a business have a lot of impact on other people's lives. You have employees, and this is something that needs to be worked out on. Yeah.
Thank you, Victor. With that, I would like to conclude the end of the session by just passing it on to Antoinette. So Antoinette, would you mind taking over from here?
Thank you, Haziq, and hello to everyone else. I hope you enjoyed this panel. And thank you to our panelists, Elin, Tuan, and Victor, and our amazing moderator, of course, Haziq, for sharing today. It was truly an inspiring discussion and a joy to listen to. And to everyone listening, thank you so much for joining. If you are a fellow or an entrepreneur in Singapore and you're interested in getting involved with the Singapore Innovation Hub, feel free to connect with me directly at Antoinette@resolutionproject.org. I hope everyone has an amazing rest of their day, and stay tuned for more. We look forward to seeing you all again, and thank you so much.
Just a quick one from me. If we have a request, right? If everyone could just turn on their camera, let's just do like a quick group photo together. I think that would be nice. Russ, are you there, Russ? Okay, we have, all right, we have another Victor. Gordon, Kenny, all right, Russ, on your count, you can take the photo for us.
Okay, one more. One at a count of three. All right, 3, 2, 1. All right, thanks everyone. Take care. Keep well. Look forward to the next
Thanks,
session.
everyone. Nice meeting you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.